I don't even know where to start. Maybe with the truth, I never thought I'd end up here, saying these things out loud. I never thought my life would twist itself into something I can barely recognize, but it did. And now, I can't hold it inside anymore. My name doesn't matter. Let's just say I'm 23, fresh out of college, living back at home while I try to figure out what comes next. My mom, Susan, works a lot. She's always been the strong one, the dependable one, the person who never lets anything slip through the cracks. She remarried a few years ago, and that's how Mark came into our lives. Mark, my stepfather. He's 45, and for most of the time I've known him, he was fine. Not extraordinary. Not terrible. Just fine. The kind of man you thank for picking you up from the airport or for fixing the garbage disposal when it clogs. Steady, dependable. The man who sat at the other end of the dinner table and asked me about my classes, who always carried the groceries in for my mom, for years. I never looked at him twice. He was just part of the house, part of our life. If anyone had asked me how I felt about him, I would have shrugged and said he was good to Mom, and that was enough for me. But something shifted. Not overnight, not in some big dramatic moment. It was quieter than that. Subtle. The kind of change you don't notice until it's already too late. I remember the first time I caught him looking at me in a way that didn't feel like a father, even a stepfather. We were sitting at the dinner table, plates between us. Mom telling a story about work. I looked up, and his eyes were on me. Not harsh, not glaring, just on me. Focused. Like he wasn't even hearing what Mom was saying. And when I met his gaze, instead of looking away quickly like most people do when they're caught staring, he held it. Just a second too long, not enough for Mom to notice, but enough for me to feel it. Like a flicker in the air, a tiny spark no one else could see. I told myself I imagined it. People look at people all the time. Maybe I had food on my face. Maybe I was paranoid. That's what I thought then. That's what I wanted to think. But then it happened again. And again. I'd walk into the kitchen in the morning, still in my pajamas, hair messy from sleep, and I'd catch him glancing at me. Nothing obvious, just a quick sweep of his eyes that made my skin prickle. At first I brushed it off, then I couldn't. Because once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it. And the worst part? I felt something too. I hated myself for it. But every time his eyes lingered, a strange rush went through me. Like my body knew something my brain didn't want to admit. My heart would skip. My breath would catch. And I'd leave the room as fast as I could, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But nothing doesn't make your chest tighten like that. Nothing doesn't make you lie awake at night, replaying the look in someone's eyes. I thought I was safe in the normal parts of life. When we sat together with Mom, when we watched TV as a family, I clung to those moments like proof that everything was fine. But then there would be a slip, a second too long when our hands brushed while passing a plate, a moment when I stood up and felt his gaze follow me out of the room, and Mom, she didn't see it. Not then. She trusted him. She trusted me. She trusted us. That's the part that hurts the most. Maybe. How much trust sat between us like glass, and how quickly it started to crack without her knowing. I don't think Mark planned any of it at first. At least, I want to believe he didn't. He was always careful, always measured. But you can't hide everything. Not forever. And the longer I stayed at home, the more I noticed. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. His face would soften, His mouth would part like he wanted to say something but didn't. And then, just like that, he'd snap back into the role of stepfather, asking if I'd eaten or if I needed the car. And me? I'd pretend it never happened. I'd laugh too loudly, change the subject, flee to my room and close the door like it could shut out the storm building inside me. But it didn't. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's not just what he did. It's what I felt. The shame, the fear, the heat in my skin that shouldn't have been there. I knew it was wrong. I knew it from the first moment, but I didn't stop it. I didn't push back. I told myself it was harmless, that as long as nothing happened, it didn't matter if his eyes lingered or if my heart pounded when they did, that it was just tension in my head. That's the lie I clung to, and the lie that carried me right to the edge of everything that came later. You might be asking, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I tell Mom? I've asked myself the same thing 1,000 times. Maybe because I didn't want to see the look on her face. Maybe because some twisted part of me liked the attention. Or maybe because I thought it would all fade if I just ignored it. But it didn't fade. It grew. Quietly. Patiently. Like a shadow stretching longer with each passing day. I wish I could tell you I was stronger. That I shut it down. That I confronted him. That I kept the lines clean. But that wouldn't be the truth. And if I'm going to tell this story, it has to be the truth, no matter how ugly it is. The truth is, by the time the real moment came, the one that broke everything open, I was already caught, already trapped in the pull of something I didn't understand and couldn't control. And the worst part? Some nights, lying awake, I didn't even want to control it. That's where it started. Not with a kiss, not with a touch, just with a look across the table, a glance too heavy in the kitchen, a silence that lasted one beat too long. And from that moment on, there was no going back. It was hot that afternoon, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin and makes the air feel heavy. Mom was at work. I remember dragging a lounge chair out to the edge of the pool, laying back in my bikini and closing my eyes against the sun. I wasn't trying to be seductive. I wasn't even thinking about him. I just wanted to feel the warmth on my skin, to let the day pass quietly. But then I heard the sliding door open. The sound made my stomach flip before I even looked. And when I did, it was Mark. He carried a towel in one hand, like it was nothing, just a normal gesture. He smiled, an easy smile, but his eyes lingered. "You look like you're burning up," he said, holding the towel out. "Here, cover up. Don't want you getting sick." It should have been fatherly, harmless. But when I reached to take it, his fingers brushed my shoulder, slow, just enough to make me shiver. I froze. For a split second, my whole body lit up, heat that had nothing to do with the sun. And then it was over. He pulled his hand back quickly, almost too quickly, like he knew it lasted longer than it should have. "Thanks," I whispered, clutching the towel, trying to act normal. But I couldn't stop the rush that raced through me. My skin tingled where he touched. My chest rose and fell too fast. He sat down on the chair beside me, closer than I expected. Not right up against me, but near enough that I could feel the air shift. "Hot day," he said, as if that explained everything. I nodded, staring straight ahead, every nerve in my body screaming. I wanted to move, to stand up, to jump into the water and disappear. But I didn't. I stayed right there. The silence stretched between us. I could feel his gaze sliding over me, stopping, starting again. I tried not to notice, but the weight of it pressed down harder with every second. I adjusted the strap of my bikini top, a nervous habit, and I swear I felt his eyes follow the movement. My cheeks burned. I should have left. I know that now. I should have grabbed my things and walked inside without a word. But I didn't. I stayed. I let the moment keep going. "College must have been stressful," he said after a while, his voice low. "You look different, more grown up." I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. Grown up? The word stuck in my head. "Yeah," I murmured. "It was." His eyes lingered on me again, softer this time, but heavy. A gaze that stripped away the safe walls between us. And then he looked away, cleared his throat, and said something about needing to get back to the garage. He stood up quickly, almost too quickly, like he'd caught himself in the middle of something dangerous. The door slid shut behind him, and I was alone again. Only I wasn't. Not really, because his presence stayed. The way he looked at me stayed. The way his fingers brushed my shoulder stayed. I lay back on the chair, clutching the towel like a shield, but my heart kept racing. That night, I couldn't stop replaying it. The sun on my skin, the way his eyes had searched me, the heat in his touch. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. And the worst part? Part of me didn't want to forget it. I told myself it was just a misunderstanding, that he didn't mean anything by it, that I was making it bigger than it was. But deep down, I knew. There had been a pause in that touch, a hesitation that was too deliberate, too loaded to be an accident. From then on, everything felt different. I'd catch myself noticing things I never paid attention to before, the way his arm looked when he lifted groceries, the faint smell of cologne he left in the hallway, the way his voice dropped when he spoke quietly. I hated that I noticed. I hated that my body reacted before my mind could stop it. And every time I thought about Mom, about how much she trusted us, I felt sick. Because if I could feel this, if he could look at me like that, then something was already broken. A few days later, another moment happened, smaller, but just as heavy. I was in the kitchen, filling a glass of water when he walked in. Too close. He brushed past me, his arm grazing mine. It should have meant nothing. It should have been ordinary. But my body jolted like electricity had shot through me. "Sorry," he murmured, not looking at me. But his voice had that same low edge, the same pause that made me question everything. I pressed the glass to my lips, trying to hide the way my hand shook. At night, lying awake, I kept asking myself, did I imagine it? Did I create something that wasn't there? Or did I recognize something neither of us was brave or foolish enough to say out loud? It was just a look, just a brush of fingers, just a shoulder grazing mine. But those tiny things stacked on top of each other until they didn't feel tiny anymore. They felt like the start of something. And once you feel the start of something, you can't ever go back to pretending it isn't there. That pool day was the moment the ground shifted under my feet. I walked into it thinking life was ordinary, safe, clear. I walked out knowing there was a line between us. Thin, invisible, but burning hot. And I knew, no matter how hard I tried, not to cross it. I was already standing too close. After that day by the pool, nothing felt normal anymore. Or maybe everything looked normal from the outside. But inside me, every moment was charged with something I didn't want to name. Dinner was the worst. We'd all sit together. Mom talking about her shift at work, Mark cutting into his food like any husband, any stepfather. But then his eyes would flick toward me, just a second too long. I'd lower my head, stabbing at my plate, pretending not to notice, pretending my chest wasn't tightening, pretending my cheeks weren't hot. "Rachel," he said one night, after Mom joked about me never cooking. "You're an adult now. You should learn. Maybe I can show you a recipe or two." The way he said adult made my stomach clench, like he wanted me to hear it differently, like he wasn't talking to a daughter, even a stepdaughter, but to a woman. I laughed nervously, brushing it off. "Sure, maybe." Mom didn't notice. She laughed too, shaking her head. But I noticed. I always noticed. It didn't stop there. One evening, I was curled up on the couch, book in hand. Mom had gone to bed early, exhausted. The house was quiet, soft with the hum of the refrigerator and the faint glow of the lamp. Mark walked in. I told myself it was nothing, that he was just passing through. But he didn't pass. He sat down, not across the room, not even at the other end of the couch. He sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the cushion shift under his weight. "Good book?" he asked casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah," I murmured, my voice tight. For a few minutes, I tried to keep reading, but every nerve in my body was screaming. His shoulder brushed mine once, twice, like the couch wasn't wide enough for both of us. I shifted slightly, but he didn't move away. Then it happened. He reached for the remote on the table, and his hand grazed mine. Not hard, not deliberate, but it lingered just a fraction of a second too long. I froze. My breath caught. The air between us thickened instantly. "Sorry," he said, voice low, pulling back slowly. But I knew, and he knew I knew. My hand stayed where it was, trembling. I should have pulled it back. I should have said something. Instead, I kept it there, heart pounding so loud it drowned out every thought. I forced my eyes back to the book, but I didn't see the words anymore. All I felt was the heat radiating between us. All I heard was my pulse. I closed the book finally, unable to stand it, and looked at him. He wasn't looking at the TV. He was looking at me. That moment lasted forever. His eyes. Mine. The silence heavy with things neither of us said. I swallowed. Stood up quickly. I should go to bed. He nodded, his jaw tight. "Good night, Rachel." His voice caught on my name. I heard it. I felt it. In my room. I leaned against the door, my chest heaving. My skin still tingled where his hand had brushed mine. I told myself I hated it, that it was wrong, that I wanted to wash the feeling away. But when I closed my eyes, the scene replayed over and over, and the truth was cruel. I didn't hate it. I wanted more. The next days were filled with small, unbearable moments. Passing in the hallway. His arm brushed mine. Too close in the kitchen, his chest at my back for just a second as he reached for a cabinet. Each time, my body reacted before I could think. A shiver, a catch of breath, a weakness in my knees. And always, the look in his eyes when our gazes locked. Hungry, guilty, desperate. One evening, the three of us watched TV together. Mom dozed off halfway through, her head lolling to the side. Mark shifted closer. So slowly I barely noticed until his thigh was against mine. I didn't move. I sat there, motionless, afraid to breathe. My skin burned at the point of contact. My heart beat against my ribs like it wanted out. For a moment, I thought he'd pull away, pretend it never happened. But he didn't. He stayed. And I stayed. The room felt suffocating. Mom sleeping just inches away. Mark pressed against me, my body alive with something I couldn't admit. Then Mom stirred, shifting in her seat. Mark moved instantly, leaning back, creating space. My breath whooshed out in a shaky rush, like I'd been holding it the whole time. I excused myself, ran upstairs, and shut the door. I paced my room, hands gripping my hair, whispering to myself, "Stop it. Stop feeling this. Stop letting it happen." But I couldn't. That night, lying in bed, I thought about his thigh against mine, the way he hadn't moved until Mom stirred. I thought about his hand grazing mine, about his eyes holding mine across the dim light of the living room. Every little thing was stacking up, piece by piece, until it was no longer small, until it was undeniable. I knew I was playing with fire. I knew the line was there, sharp and clear, and that I was standing right on it. But I didn't step back. I didn't tell him to stop. I didn't tell Mom, and maybe, in my silence, I was saying yes. That's what haunts me now, that I didn't say no. That maybe, deep down, I didn't want to. I thought maybe it would stop. That if I just kept quiet, if I stayed out of his way, the moments would fade back into nothing. I told myself he'd come to his senses, that he'd remember who he was supposed to be, my stepfather, my mother's husband, the steady man who fixed things around the house and asked about my day. But it didn't stop. It grew. One afternoon, I stretched out on the couch with a blanket, exhausted from the heat, the TV droning in the background. My eyelids grew heavy, and I drifted off. I woke to a faint sound, a click, a tiny electronic noise I couldn't place at first. When my eyes fluttered open, Mark was standing a few feet away, his phone angled toward me. I froze. He shifted instantly, pretending to scroll. "Sorry, did I wake you?" he asked, voice casual, too casual. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, that the sound hadn't been what I thought. But the way his hand trembled as he slipped the phone into his pocket told me everything. He hadn't just been scrolling. I pulled the blanket tighter around me and forced a smile, my throat dry. "No, it's fine." He nodded, walked out, and left me sitting there, skin prickling, heart racing. That night, I couldn't shake it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the glow of his phone, the way he'd stood over me. I told myself maybe it was innocent. Maybe he'd just been checking a message. But deep down, I knew. And the proof came sooner than I expected. A few days later, I walked past his room. The door was half open. I wasn't trying to snoop, but something drew my eyes in. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, phone in his hands. On the screen was me, by the pool. Me, stretched out in the sun in my bikini. The image was zoomed in, tighter than any picture should have been. His thumb slid slowly across the glass, pausing, enlarging. My breath caught. I stumbled back, pressing myself against the wall, hoping he hadn't seen me. My chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. I couldn't believe it, couldn't process that he'd crossed into something so deliberate, so undeniable. I ran to my room, slammed the door, pressed my back against it like a child hiding from monsters. My hands shook, but here's the truth I don't want to admit. I wasn't just horrified. I wasn't only disgusted. A part of me, a dark, hidden part, felt something else. I felt seen. Not in the way I should have wanted, not in the way a woman wants to be seen by someone safe, but in a way that made my heart race, in a way that made my skin burn. I hated myself for it. I wanted to scream, to throw his phone in the pool, to tell Mom everything, but I didn't. I sat in my room, clutching my pillow, replaying the image in my mind, his eyes on me through that lens, his attention fixed only on me. The next morning, I couldn't look at him. At breakfast, Mom chatted cheerfully about her work schedule, pouring coffee, completely unaware. Mark sat across from me, sipping his drink, his expression unreadable. I kept my eyes down, but I could feel him watching me. Every bite of toast turned to dust in my mouth. "Big plans today?" he asked lightly, like nothing had happened. I shook my head. Not really. Our eyes met for a second, just 1 second. And in that second, everything was laid bare. I knew what he'd done. He knew I knew. And neither of us said a word. The silence between us became a living thing. It followed me through the house, into my room, into my dreams. I stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at my reflection, my skin, my hair, the curve of my shoulders. I touched the glass as if trying to see what he saw. "Is it my fault?" I whispered. "Did I invite this?" I hated that the question even formed, but it did. Because when I remembered the heat in his eyes, the way his thumb traced over my image on that screen, I couldn't deny the way my body had reacted, the way my heart had raced, the way my breath had quickened. I told myself it was fear, just fear, but was it? Or was it something worse? Something I didn't dare to name? From then on, I couldn't be in the same room with him without thinking of those pictures. Every time he glanced at me, I wondered if he was picturing them, if he was storing more, hidden on that phone, secret images of me I'd never agreed to give. And yet, I never told Mom. Why? Because I was terrified, because I was ashamed, because some twisted part of me didn't want to let go of the attention. That was the moment I knew the line had been crossed. Not with a kiss, not with a touch, but with a photograph. A photograph I never gave him permission to take. And once that line was crossed, there was no pretending anymore. The worst part? I still said nothing. I let it fester. I let it grow. And in my silence, I knew I was feeding the fire. I thought I could keep living like nothing was happening. Pretend the house was the same. Pretend the glances didn't burn. Pretend the silence wasn't heavy. But my mother isn't stupid. At first, it was small things. The way her eyes narrowed when she walked into the room and found me sitting too close to Mark on the couch. The way she asked questions about where I'd been, what I was doing, whether I was all right. One night at dinner, she watched us both carefully, like she was looking for something just out of sight. "You two are quiet," she said, forcing a smile. "Everything okay?" I nearly dropped my fork. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just tired." Mark didn't say anything. He kept eating, but I saw the tension in his jaw. Mom's eyes moved between us, sharp and searching. I knew then she felt it. She might not have known what, but she felt the shift. And when a woman feels something in her home, she doesn't let it go. A few days later, she came home early. I hadn't expected her. I was in the living room with Mark, the TV on, but neither of us watching. He drifted closer to me, so close our knees nearly touched. That's when the front door opened. I jumped back like I'd been burned, my heart hammering. Mom stood there, her bag over her shoulder, eyes flicking from me to Mark. She didn't say anything at first, just looked. "Hey," Mark said lightly, too lightly. "You're home early." "Yeah," she said, her voice flat. "Early." The way she looked at us made my skin crawl. She knew, maybe not everything, maybe not the worst of it, but enough to sense something was wrong. That night, the house felt colder. She hardly spoke to either of us. I lay awake in my room, listening to the floor creak as she paced. The next morning, she was quiet, her face unreadable as she poured her coffee. I wanted to ask her what was wrong. I wanted to tell her everything, But I didn't. I sat there, silent, guilty, my stomach in knots. And then it happened. It was late. Mark had already gone to bed, or so I thought. I woke up to the sound of footsteps and crept to the hallway. Mom stood outside his room, holding his phone. My heart stopped. She must have taken it while he slept. I pressed myself against the wall, hidden, watching her face lit up by the screen. Her eyes widened, her mouth parted, her hand shook. I didn't have to see the images to know what they were. Me. I could feel it, like a punch in my gut. Her breathing grew uneven, sharp, like she was trying not to cry, trying not to scream. She scrolled, picture after picture. Every flick of her finger, another nail in the coffin. Finally, she covered her mouth with her hand, her whole body trembling. She closed the phone, clutching it like poison, and stood there in the dark. I slipped back to my room before she could see me, my chest tight, tears pricking my eyes. I curled up in bed, shaking. The truth was out now. Not to the world, not to neighbors or friends, but to the one person who mattered most, my mother, and I had no idea what she would do with it. The next day, she acted normal. Too normal. She made breakfast, asked about my plans, kissed Mark on the cheek like always, but her eyes were cold, calculating. I felt them on me, sharp as knives. She didn't confront him right then. She didn't confront me either. She held it inside, waiting, watching. And that silence was worse than screaming. Every second at the table felt like glass underfoot. Every glance from her carried suspicion, accusation, betrayal. I couldn't eat. My hands shook. Mark didn't notice, or maybe he pretended not to. He joked about the weather, about sports, but I saw the way Mom's mouth tightened, the way her eyes darted toward him like she was measuring every word. She knew. And I knew it was only a matter of time before she said it out loud. That evening, I found myself alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. I was trapped. Trapped between Mark's silence and my mother's watchful eyes. Trapped in a house where every corner hid a secret, and I knew the storm was coming. Because a woman like my mother doesn't sit quietly forever. She'd seen the truth, and sooner or later, she was going to burn the whole thing down. I kept waiting for the moment. Every hour felt like a countdown, like a bomb ticking somewhere in the house. Mom had seen the pictures. I knew it. She carried that truth in her silence, in the sharpness of her gaze, in the way her voice went flat when she spoke to Mark. I thought maybe she'd never say it. Maybe she'd keep the poison bottled up inside and let it kill us all slowly. But I was wrong. It happened on a night I'll never forget. Mom was supposed to be working late. Mark and I were in the living room, the TV flickering, neither of us really watching. The space between us on the couch shrank little by little, like the air itself was pushing us closer. I could feel his leg near mine, the heat of it. My pulse quickened. I told myself to get up, to move, to stop this before it went anywhere, but I didn't. His hand shifted, hovering just a breath away from my knee, not touching. Not yet, but so close I could feel the tension buzzing in my skin. And then the front door opened. I jumped, my body stiffening. Mark pulled back like he'd been burned. Mom stepped into the room, her bag sliding off her shoulder, her eyes instantly narrowing. She looked at us, at me, at him, at the small, guilty space between our bodies, and something in her expression broke. "Stand up," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the air. Neither of us moved. "Now." Her voice was louder this time, trembling with rage. I scrambled to my feet, my hands shaking. Mark rose too, slower, his face pale. Mom's hand shot into her purse. She pulled out a phone, his phone, and tossed it onto the coffee table. The screen lit up, and there it was, my face. A photo of me by the pool, frozen in pixels. "Explain this," she spat. My stomach dropped. My mouth went dry. Mark's face drained of color. "Susan, don't you dare," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare lie to me." I couldn't breathe. The room tilted, my legs weak. "Mom," I whispered, but my voice broke. She turned on me, her eyes filled with betrayal. "You knew." Tears stung my eyes. I didn't." Her face twisted, her voice cracking. "Don't you dare tell me you didn't feel it. Don't you dare stand there and pretend this is all in my head." Mark lifted his hands helplessly. "It wasn't supposed to—" "Shut up," she screamed, her whole body shaking. "You disgust me. Both of you." Her words cut deeper than any blade. I felt them in my bones. "I didn't want this," I choked out, sobbing. I didn't know what to do, but even as I said it, the truth clawed at me. I hadn't stopped it. I hadn't pulled away. I hadn't told her. "You let it happen," she said coldly. "You both let it happen." Mark stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. "Susan, please, listen. Don't come near me," she shouted, her voice breaking into a sob. She pointed to the door with a trembling hand. "Get out of my house, now." Mark froze, his chest heaving. "Now," she screamed again, her voice raw. He grabbed a bag, his hands clumsy, stuffing clothes without looking. His face was pale, drained of everything. He avoided my eyes as he moved, but I could feel the weight of his presence, the shame radiating from him. I stood in the middle of the living room, trembling, tears streaming down my face, watching the world collapse around me. Mom stood rigid, her arms crossed tight against her chest, tears glistening in her eyes but never falling. Mark slung the bag over his shoulder. For a moment, he looked at me. Just a flicker. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He turned and walked out into the night. The door slammed shut behind him. The echo rang through the house like thunder. And then there was silence. I turned to Mom, desperate, broken. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." Her eyes were ice. "Sorry doesn't fix this." I crumpled to the floor, sobbing, clutching my knees. My whole body shook with the weight of everything, the guilt, the shame, the loss. Mom stood there, unmoving, staring at me like I was a stranger. I wanted her to hold me. I wanted her to tell me it would be okay. But she didn't. She just looked at me, her face hard, her heart closed. The silence between us was louder than any scream. I don't remember how long I cried. Minutes. Hours. Time didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that everything I thought I knew about love, about safety, about family, was gone. When I finally lifted my head, Mom was gone. Her door was shut. The house was dark. I was alone, alone with my shame, alone with the memory of his eyes, his hand, his pictures, alone with the truth that I hadn't stopped it. That maybe, deep down, I hadn't wanted to. And that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something that made my stomach turn. The story wasn't over. Not yet. The house was never the same after that night. Mark was gone, and Mom shut herself away like she was sealing off a wound too raw to touch. She stopped looking at me the same. stopped laughing the way she used to. Her voice grew sharp, clipped, efficient, like every word was a blade. She still lived with me, still made coffee in the mornings, still went to work. But the warmth was gone. Every glance she gave me felt like judgment, every silence like a verdict. I wanted to talk to her, to explain. But what could I say? That I hadn't wanted it, but I hadn't stopped it? That I was trapped in something I didn't understand, something that felt wrong and right all at once? No matter what words I chose, none of them would make sense. None of them would make her forgive me. Sometimes I caught her staring at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Her face would tighten, her eyes narrowing. And I knew what she was thinking, that I was part of it, that I let him in, that I was no longer her daughter, but something else, something broken. I started spending hours alone in my room, just lying there, staring at the ceiling. My mind ran in circles, replaying everything. The first look across the dinner table, the brush of his hand, the poolside afternoon, the photos. Each memory burned, but I couldn't shut them out. They clung to me like smoke after a fire. And here's the part that tears me apart. Even after he left, even after Mom's fury scorched us both, a part of me still felt the pull. A part of me still longed for his eyes on me, for the dangerous thrill of being wanted. I hated myself for it. I wanted to scrub it from my body, from my mind, from my soul. But it lingered. The guilt was unbearable. I'd stand in front of the mirror at night, whispering to my reflection, "What's wrong with you? Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you tell her sooner?" Tears would slide down my cheeks, but no answers came. The worst was the way Mom's silence built walls between us. She didn't yell anymore. She didn't accuse me out loud, but she didn't hug me either, didn't smile, didn't ask how I was. She was there, but she wasn't, and that emptiness hurt more than any scream ever could. I'd watch her move through the house like a ghost, and I knew she was grieving the marriage she thought she had, grieving the trust she thought she could place in both of us, and maybe grieving me too, the daughter she once believed in. And me? I was grieving myself, the version of me that hadn't been touched by all this, that hadn't let those moments of silence stretch too long, that hadn't let my body betray me with shivers and skipped breaths. That girl was gone. Sometimes I wondered where Mark was. If he thought about me, if he hated himself as much as I hated myself, if he replayed those nights the way I did. I didn't want to wonder, but I did. And every time, the shame came crashing back, heavier than before. The house became a prison of glances, silences, and secrets. And inside that prison, I kept asking the same questions over and over. When should I have stopped it? Was it the first time I caught his eyes lingering? Should I have told Mom right then? Was it the night on the couch when his hand grazed mine and I didn't pull away? Was it when I saw the photos and chose silence instead of screaming? Or was it all too late from the very beginning? From the first second, I felt the rush in my chest and didn't want it to stop. I don't know. And maybe I'll never know. All I know is that everything is different now. The house is full of cracks, the kind that no paint can hide, no repair can fix. Trust is gone. Safety is gone. And I'm left standing in the wreckage, clutching the pieces of myself, not sure if I'll ever put them back together. And that's why I'm telling you this. Not for sympathy, not for forgiveness, but because I can't keep it inside anymore. The silence is killing me. So I'm asking you, the only people left who might give me an answer, did I do the right thing? Was I wrong from the start? For not speaking up? For letting it go too far? For being silent when I should have screamed? Or was I trapped? Like a moth circling a flame it knows will burn but can't resist. Tell me, please, because I don't know anymore. Leave a comment below and tell me, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have stopped it the first time? Or is there no way to stop something once the line has been crossed? I want to hear what you think.